I'm super excited to be at Monticello, where I get to see the estate of this guy, Thomas Jefferson.
TJ basics are that Jefferson was born into a prominent family on April 13th, 1743. He was born at his father's plantation in Virginia. His dad was named Peter Jefferson. His mother was named Jane Randolph. He ended up marrying a widow named Martha Wales Skelton when she was 23. They had a happy marriage for a decade, but unfortunately she died in 1782. He would later take up with his mistress, Sally Hemings. He had 12 children, 6 with Martha, 6 with Sally, who happened to be Martha's half-sister and a slave. He is prominent because he is known for being one of the most important founding fathers of the United States.
This is Monticello on Thomas Jefferson's 5,000 acres of land.
Monticello has been a World Heritage Site since 1987. It is the only presidential home to be thus named. It is the home that Thomas Jefferson designed himself and built multiple times over his lifetime. Monticello means little mountain in Italian, and the estate is perched on top of a little mountain that oversees the lands around it.
This is the view from Monticello, looking down over Mulberry Row.
Over 600 slaves worked at various times on this estate, including some of Thomas Jefferson's own children. Monticello is a home full of artifacts from the Lewis and Clark expedition, which explored the Louisiana Purchase lands. It has fine arts, busts of prominent men that Thomas Jefferson admired, and of course, many books in the library. Thomas Jefferson was a voracious reader, though he started wearing spectacles at night by the late 1790s because he could no longer read fine print. He was a principal founder of the Library of Congress, and the U.S. government purchased many books from him in 1815 for this institution to then house for the American people. This is Thomas Jefferson's bedroom. I know that Thomas Jefferson was 6 feet 2 inches tall, but I could see I would barely fit into his very small bed. I learned that the sleeping practices of the 1700s and 1800s were different from what they are today. People back then thought that you should keep your back up against the headboard, which means they slept sitting upright like they were on a perpetual airplane ride.
See behind me? Monticello. This is actually the side of the house that you would see on the back of a nickel in your pocket.
Well, no nuanced thought fits perfectly into boxes labeled left, right. If you are a person more on the left side of politics today, American politics that is, you might focus on Jefferson's democratic ideals as exceptionally positive. Despite the fact that he was part of the lauded elite, TJ made a point of equal worth per citizenship through symbolic actions like walking to his inauguration as the nation's third president. He was a firm believer in public education and expanded this as much as possible. He was determined to separate church and state and guarantee religious freedom for every citizen. He appreciated the power of revolutions, and he even thought sometimes revolutions were necessary. While no nuanced thought fits perfectly in boxes labeled left, right, if you're a person more on the right side of politics today, American politics that is, you might focus on Jefferson's belief in free thought and free speech as being essential to free societies. He favored the liberty of the individual and the community, being suspicious of strong federal powers that could be too remote to govern local concerns well. He understood that life is a series of trade-offs and carefully weighed these trade-offs when proposing solutions to difficult problems. He was a flawed human being, to be sure, but he accomplished many great things in his time on this planet. He appreciated the necessity of social stability. Jefferson is most known for writing the Declaration of Independence, which based the founding principles of the United States in natural rights and the idea that all men are created equal. But while he seems to have understood that all men meant all human beings, he freed less than 10 of his slaves in his life and after his death, and that is something any Jefferson scholar has to grapple with. He is an especially complicated president to understand.
This is a slave's home at Monticello. The extensive vegetable gardens were often tended by older slaves.
Some completely different sorts of facts. TJ rode a horse every day for his health. He was supposed to be an exceptionally fine rider. He had a horse named Tecumseh, which I thought's kind of cool. He had a statue of himself placed on one side of a room with the statue of Alexander Hamilton on the other. The men were rivals in real life in George Washington's cabinet, so Jefferson's statue is placed to always be watching Hamilton's statue per TJ's actual orders. A Jefferson admirer, who's the first U.S. naval officer who was Jewish, bought Monticello and had his family take care of the home for posterity for almost 100 years before it was made into a public museum.
This is the University of Virginia, Thomas Jefferson's most beloved legacy. He is the man who said, knowledge is power, knowledge is safety, and knowledge is happiness.
Jefferson died on July 4th at Monticello in 1826. He was over $2 million in debt when he died, so much of his estate was liquidated. For his many contributions and contradictions, Jefferson continues to be a man who intrigues historians today.
It's really cool when you think about walking in the steps of people who came before you. And that is what I'm doing as I'm exploring the paths around Thomas Jefferson's estate.